Welcome to part 1 of a 4-part series on Tulum. The series is meant to function as a guide to those who are interested in visiting Tulum and experiencing something of the cultural and geographical wonders of the town and its surroundings. As you can see by the map of the eastern edge of the Yucatan Peninsula, Tulum is a small town about an hour-and-a-half drive south of Cancun. You can reach Tulum by one of 3 ways. Firstly, you can grab the local transport, that is the colectivo. It's cheap, but it's not always what you feel like doing after your flight and with your luggage. And if you've not been to Mexico before, maybe you just would like a simpler way of getting there. So you could rent a car directly from the airport, or, as we did on our last trip, we took a shuttle that we had booked on the internet. The company was Best Day. We've used it before, and it has proven to be relatively cheap, remarkably versatile, and relatively hassle-free. Maggie and I are both regular visitors to Tulum, and for us, the laid-back atmosphere and the complete absence of spring break mentality are what we are looking for in a vacation experience. Those with an artistic bent, a hippie leaning, a cultural curiosity, or the yearning to explore will find Tulum to be a place of endless wonder. Tulum makes a claim to be the cave diving capital of the world. Of course, some might debate that. There is a sizable community of cave divers in North Florida, and more cave divers are said to have had their first experience in Ginny Springs than in any other place in the world. As a diving guide who works for Mexi Divers explained, when cavern diving, you can always see your exit. When cave diving, you are deeper into tunnels in an environment that is absolutely devoid of any light other than what you are carrying yourself. And when we are talking about local cenotes, there is a third, less lethal opportunity to experience them. It is snorkeling, and anyone who can swim can do this. And so, as you might imagine, when blending a leisure activity that is devoid of living practicality, and which is dependent upon technology, money, and modern innovation, with an atmosphere that is as exotic and rural as the lower reaches of the Yucatan, and of all places a province such as Quintaru, which 60 years ago was unexplored jungle. The atmosphere is an unusual melding of cultures, times, and environments that make Tulum such a unique and exciting place to visit. As a visitor in Tulum, you can see and experience much of what the usual tourist has come to expect. Shopping, food, swimming, surf, and social interaction. But also, for the paucity of really large resorts, such as those around Cancun, there is a greater opportunity to intermingle with the local culture. And of course, it is here that the dimension of time is clearly felt. The Mayans seem somewhat removed from the present, their language being for most an inexplicable puzzle for its complexity, and the words that have multiple meanings, that are only properly expressed in the subtleties that are placed upon them by a native speaker. And you have only to step off the beaten path to see crumbling pyramids, cloaked in vines, decaying in obscurity. Everywhere there are connections to the past, and the environment which is pocked by cenotes leading down to caverns and underground rivers. These are not only an environmental feature, but also a historical link back to the Mayan belief in their underworld, Xibalba. As one of the 4 surviving Mayan codex that remain from Spanish colonial times, the Popol Vuh explains the Mayan creation belief. It was translated by Hermilio Abreu Gomez, and it has some remarkable similarities to other creation explanations. As the Popol Vuh begins, "In the beginning, there were no people, no animals, no trees, nothing. It was all a desolate wasteland, with no end. Space lay still upon the flatness, and the immense sea rested over chaos." And then it goes on to say, "In the silence of the darkness lived the gods, who were said to be Tepu, Gukamats, and Huracan, and in whose names are guarded the secrets of creation, existence, and death, the earth and its creatures. When the gods came to the place where darkness dwelled, they spoke amongst themselves, made clear their feelings, and agreed on what should be done. They thought of how to make light flow, light which would be fed by eternity. Light was then formed within the womb of the eternal existence. They also studied the original nature of life, which abides in the heart of the unknown. The gods were favorably disposed to the existence of the creatures who were to be born. So in essence, according to the Popol Vuh, we were all born from the darkest depths of the Mayan underworld, past the cenotes, deep into the endless tunnels beneath the Yucatan. In understanding the creation myths, the Mayans believed that their shaks, or rain gods, presided over the underground water flow. In fact, there is a well-known river system in the vicinity of Tulum called Shakmul, which is translated from the Mayan language as pathway of the rain gods. The word cenote comes from the Mayan word cenote. To them, with no surface water on the Yucatan, cenotes were essential to the maintenance of their civilization, and in turn, there was religious significance applied to the existence of these features. Geographically speaking, a cenote is a sinkhole or a pit where groundwater reaches the surface. It is especially characteristic of the Yucatan Peninsula. Several are easily accessed from the town of Tulum. In an area of exposed limestone, rain water generally sinks beneath the surface through cracks and fissures in the rock. And as limestone has a tight interlocking internal structure, subsurface water moves along horizontal fractures known as bedding planes, or vertical fractures known as joints. Over time, those features become enlarged and develop into underground rivers. When the water table is close to the surface, the underground river can erode the landscape from beneath. If the water table drops, what is sometimes left is an air-filled cavity with a roof previously supported from beneath by water, now unstable and collapsing. Collapse from below often leaves a circular pool, and as in Quintaru, these pools generally connect to extensive subsurface river systems. The Grand Cenote is found a few kilometers west of Tulum. It is connected to Sac Actun, which in 2007 became one of the longest mapped underground systems in the world. At that time, it was measured to be 215.4 kilometers in length. Of course, since then, that distance has indeed been increased. The cenotes that we're going to visit in this video are Grand Cenote, Cenote Calavera, the Manatee Cenote, and Dos Ojos. As you can see by this sketch map and the blue marker points, there are many cenotes within easy reach of Tulum. Grand Cenote is on the Coba Road, about 5 kilometers outside Tulum. And to get there, I rented a bicycle for 100 pesos, which covers your needs between 7 a.m. in the morning and 7 p.m. at night. One piece of ID is required, and you have the use of the bike lock at no extra charge. The ride is kind of a zen experience. The heat gets really intense, and there are all sorts of things skittering around in the bush beside the road as you pedal along. Cars are just whipping by, but on the bright side, there's a lane, especially for what appears to be scooters and bikes beside every highway. The reception at the front of the Grand Cenote is somewhat surly. It's 100 pesos to get in, and you basically just leave whatever you've brought with you sitting beside the actual cenote. A further 70 cenotes to rent snorkel and flippers, and do not rent the flashlight. It's 100 pesos. Not worth it. You don't need it. Grand Cenote is somewhat commercialized. There's wooden walkways down into the actual cenote, but crystal clear waters lilies floating out where the sunlight still reaches, and deeper in the tunnels.
So you could just see it's a really beautiful spot, as all cenotes are. Basically down beneath here, dips down into the underground rivers. I don't know, I'll give it a try, see if we can video a little bit here.
Unless you've actually snorkeled in a cenote or dived or swam, it's so hard to describe the water. It is this most incredible color. Sometimes it's like a lime green jello. Other times this deep indigo or a stunning sapphire blue. In Mexico they would refer to it as azul. Something you absolutely have to see. The Cenote Calavera is located 1.7 kilometers outside Tulum on the Cobra Road. Again, I cycled there. The place looked deserted when I arrived, and I shouted "Hola" until the keeper arrived and pocketed my 50 pesos, which was about $4. Much better price than the Grand Cenote. And for this price, I also got, as part of the deal, a snorkel and goggles, the use of which was free. There are 3 holes in the rock above this cenote and beneath an enormous cavern. The sun beams through these openings and shafts of golden light penetrate the water, and it casts this impression of a burning skull on the blocks and slabs at the bottom of the pool. It could be this, or possibly the 120 human skeletons that were found here that gave the cenote its alternate name, Temple of Doom. It was early morning, and there was only myself and this local gentleman, a Mayan, enjoying the scenery.
Again, just kind of floating around. Sadly, there's not a great deal of cave tunnel here, but it's still pretty spectacular.
As I'm sitting there enjoying the cenote, 2 divers turned up. It looked like one was a student and the other one was a leader, a dive leader. And there was kind of an interesting conversation I overheard, which I wrote down immediately. So the guide said, "You okay?" Student, "Feeling a little sick." "You want to throw up?" "Not sure." "You do that now." So the student just kind of stood there. So the guide reviewed the process with him for basically, if you throw up underwater, how to clear your regulator.
We are looking out of the Cenote Calavera, or the Temple of Doom. Down here with 2 cave divers somewhere beneath. Just looking around, the little fish are taking a piece out of me. Quite aggressive. But nevertheless, there's one of the eyes of the temple. The skull, it's called the skull Calvaris. There's another eye off into the blackness. This is a real deep one. Water's cold.
The wildlife around the cenote was just amazing. This is a turquoise-browed motmot, and they had a hold of a little lizard that they were. There was actually 2 of these motmots, and they were flipping this little lizard around, and it was twisting and thrashing and so forth. And as I'm swimming actually within the cenote, along with all the swallows, I found quite a large colony of bats, and this is just some of them. And I'm swimming beneath them, and they all started getting excited. And I actually took this picture where I'd actually sunk beneath the water, and just my camera was above the water facing them. And I'm bracing for this expected shower of urine from the bats, which never came. But still, finally I ended up just kind of floating in this sort of pillar, this golden pillar of light coming through one of the Calavera's eye sockets. And it's then that I clued into the ecosystem. There's this filmy pattering of guano into the water next to me, and suddenly all these little fish that had been chewing at me had set upon the guano. And that's obviously where they get their food. And of course, who could forget the lizard? He lives in a hole above the cenote, and he can actually duck down into a shelf in the roof of the cenote. Big one. Manatee Cenote is located on the 307 that runs through Tulum. It's a busier road. It heads up towards Cancun. So Manatee Cenote is a couple of kilometers north of Tulum. Now, it is actually more like a lagoon than an actual sunken cenote. It is said to be part of Saskatoon's resurgences. There's a large underwater cavern that connects Manatee Cenote to the ocean, and supposedly 400,000 gallons of water a minute flows through here. And where it exits into the ocean, another bay, it is called Ojo de Agua, which is the eye of water. To see the Manatee Cenote, I actually hired a local gentleman. His name was Ignacio, and he worked at our hotel, the Posada Punta Piedra. And I didn't really want to drive up the side of the 307, or at least ride up the side of the 307 on my bicycle. It's a pretty busy road. So instead, Ignacio made all of the arrangements to get me there. It was a good tour. And after that, we also went to check out the turtles at Akumal and snorkeled with them and actually saw some turtles, some beautiful sea turtles. All in all, a really good trip. But the unusual thing about Manatee Cenote is that it's actually, you're swimming in a mangrove swamp, and the water's bubbling up from a couple of cavern openings down in the bottom of the actual mangrove swamp. Of course, I asked about crocodiles and snakes, and I was told they don't go there, but I don't doubt they're all around.
Looking for birds.
There is another cenote, the name El Encanto.
Uh-huh.
That one is the biggest cenote in the area. That one I think is about half kilometer distance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You mentioned somebody drowned recently.
Well, yes, that was in Chacmo.
Chacmo?
Chacmo cenote. There were the guide had both, because when you do in tanks, 1 minute is your life, man.
Yeah.
And this guy take him a little bit longer. This when he got lost.
Yeah.
He don't calculate the air he's having. He died. He died with a couple of Brazilian guys. They just got married. Though. That's sad.
That's unfortunate.
That's sad to hear.
Yes.
Well, so how do you think so far about the cenote?
Amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
Very interesting with the mangroves too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes, it is. That's really enjoyable place.
It's just under these rocks to the left that the tunnel leads off to the ocean. And this place is just swarming with fish. And here we are. This is where we leave our clothes and what have you when we go swimming. Dos Hoyos is possibly the most popular of the cenotes around Tulum. It is in the Hidden Worlds Cenote Preserve, along with the cenote Yak's Mule. And It's about 12 kilometers north of Tulum along the 307. The entry fee to Dos Ojos is 100 pesos to snorkel and more to actually dive. I believe the going rate to a tour company for tanks is $90 a tank. The center of the cenote is actually a pile of rubble, and you access the tunnels and the pools around the edges of the collapse. Just stunning when you actually look into the water. Just, again, the most incredible blue. We paid $65 US for a full tour from Tulum, everything included. Basically, we left from Mexi Divers. The tour lasted for several hours, and our guide was Jorge. Great guide. And if you're going on the cheap, of course, you can just rent a bike and cycle there. Exploration of the Dos Ojos system began in 1987, and thus far they've discovered 82 kilometers of tunnel with 28 known entrances. So these are actually cenotes or crevices or whatever sitting out in the bush, generally not known to your average person, but they're out there. In 1996 a pit was discovered within the system, which remains the deepest known cave passage in Quintaroo, and it's 119 meters. Now this is unusual because in Quintaroo it is more known for a flat bedding plane type of cave with the topography of what is known as anastomosing tunnel systems. In other words, they're all winding and interconnected. This is Maggie snorkeling through into a cavern known as the Bat Cave. That is connecting from the outer caverns of Dos Ojos, and within the Bat Cave it's pretty dark, but the water, again, the transparency is just incredible, and there's plenty of fish in there. To conclude this first of a 4-part series on visiting Tulum, as I'm sure that you can now imagine, Cenote Exploration is a great way to connect culture, time, and geography. Every cenote is different, and for the Mayan, the underworld speaks to them in something far deeper than the curiosity or recreational excitement that we have as tourists on such a trip. You are well advised to try and see beneath the surface of a simple cenote tour. If cenotes interest you, chances are exploration of the underworld interests you in general. And if that is the case, consider purchasing my book, Caving in Ontario, Exploring Buried Karst by Michael Gordon. It can be purchased on the site Lulu on the internet. So thank you for watching my video.